In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we discuss the issues that that causes problems within the underserved and marginalized communities, and how we can best help to make those situations a little bit better. Tonight we have a very special guests. We've got Dr. Lorenzo Carswell as our guest. Dr. Lorenzo Carswell holds a doctorate of ministry degree from Manifest Theological Institute. He has helped many students across a broad spectrum, including kindergarten through 12th grade and higher level education, master's and doctorate programs. Dr. Carswell received his Bachelor's of Science in Special Education with a minor in behavior disorders in 1997 from the University of South Florida. His master's in educational leadership from National Louis University in 2009, and his master's in curriculum and instruction from National Louis University in 2011. He is a professor at Hillsborough Community College, a private school, historically Black college and university. Fort Valley State University becoming short of his degree due to several injuries encountered from football, and his mother who experienced a heart attack that made his decision to come back home to Tampa. Dr. Carswell was born in a low-income housing community, Ponce de Leon Projects in Tampa, Florida, and was also raised in a nearby neighborhood, College Hill Projects, in a single-parent household where he is the oldest sibling of four young men. Having grown up in a culturally sensitive environment, Dr. Carswell took a special interest in the education, greater economic achievements as an adult. Dr. Carswell's leisure time is often spent researching and exploring new programs, as well as opportunities to assist others with building financial security. Dr. Carswell has been currently serving in the educational arena for 26 years due to an opportunity he had to be part of a historical moment at the University of South Florida. The 1995 Preparing and Innovative Leaders of Tomorrow pilot program, which was a grant written by Dr. Brenda Townsend Walker that educated 31 African American young men educators who have for the past 27 years impacted thousands of people's lives. Dr. Carswell's special interest is to provide technical programs for underprivileged families and communities. As an independent researcher and emotional intelligence coach, Dr. Carswell's primary focus is to assist people in having a positive mindset by improving in emotional intelligence, which will lead them to success. He discovered the motto, creating legacies beyond, to remind himself of the responsibility he has to his own family, as well as many others in his community and beyond. His passion is loving his family first. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Dr. Lorenzo Carswell. Welcome to the
Well,
show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, is there anything you'd like to add to your bio as I just read that out that you want people to know?
Oh, you did very well. That's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah. So, working on some more things, but right now, that's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just hop right on into the show. And I want to start with the one part that intrigued me. So when we spoke, it's about the development studies. Um, if you can tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in development studies.
Woo. Okay, let me see how I can start this. Leaving Tampa Bay Tech High School in Tampa, where I grew up at and went to high school at, as I had scholarships to Division I schools, big universities. However, I wasn't aware and prepared. I was ill prepared for SATs and ACTs. So I only took it one time, and when I took it, I failed it very badly. So I ended up going to a college where my high school football coach, Fort Valley State. It's a university now. It was a college back then with small population, but now it has grown very big now. So it's a university now. But I walked on there because I wanted to play football and so forth. So I had to take developmental studies in order to prepare myself for college level courses. At the time, I wasn't aware. I thought I was able to read. I thought I knew what reading was all about, but obviously I didn't. I was in developmental studies with writing and reading. So um, fast forward, I ended up really failing those classes like three times. And back then, in 88, 89, they had a policy where if you did not pass that exam in three semesters, then you would be suspended. So ended up being suspended. I appealed it, and the appeal failed. So I ended up coming home and getting a good job, and I was making good money. So I stayed out of school 2 years. The good thing about it is that my coach, he's passed away unfortunately last year. My head coach, he actually coached for Grambling before he came to Fort Valley. And Coach Doug Porter kept in touch with me for 2 years, and he kept a scholarship available for me. So I ended up taking that opportunity 2 years later to go back. And that's where you read in my bio where I ended up coming home due to the injuries. I ended up getting injuries, being an NFL hopeful and so forth. So by getting in developmental studies, I had to practice if I wanted to come back and play football. So I went to USF and took some practice reading courses and so forth. And I ended up passing it that time when I went back 2 years later. So I was able to play at least two more years of college ball, but I suffered in reading comprehension. I knew how to read fluently. However, the reading comprehension, understanding what I read, was very challenging for me. So that's where I ended up being in developmental studies and taking it for pretty much 2 years. So it took me 6.5 years to complete my bachelor's degree.
Mhm. Wow. So what was some of the things that within those challenges you were facing? What are some of those things that help you to progress, to move forward, and to bring you to the point of where you are right now?
Well, with reading strategies, you have to be taught those strategies. Now that I know that because I'm a professor at the college at Hillsborough Community College here in Tampa. Uh, Before I was unaware of that. So those are some missing pieces that are pretty much left out, in my opinion, through my experiences of teaching in the public school system, because they give you and they trust you. They give you this long reading passages and so forth and books to read, but we weren't taught reading strategies at that time. So the reading
Mhm.
strategies such as vocabulary and context clues, understanding what you read within the text of the material, understanding what the main idea of what you are reading, understanding the supporting details and how they support the main idea. So those were some things that I was missing with understanding how to really read with comprehension, with good comprehension. Yeah.
Okay. So can you share a significant project you've worked on in the field of development studies?
Well, I did some research, and as I was teaching, prior to me teaching developmental studies, I was in the reading lab. I started at the college in the reading lab as an assistant. As I was going, I identified and noticed a lot of students were having issues or challenges with reading and understanding what they were reading. So at that time, when I first got into my first master's degree, I started taking grammar courses at the college level. So that's when I started learning how to analyze sentence structures and different things of that nature and breaking it down and being able to teach those students in the reading lab. But as I moved forward and advanced in college developmental studies, as far as teaching that, I ended up doing research as part of my curriculum and instruction degree, which was my second degree, second master's degree from the educational leadership degree. So I
Mhm,
started doing research as far as part of my papers that I had to write in my thesis paper, which was using various
mhm.
strategies to teach ill-prepared students and so forth. So with that being said, um, I some of the projects that I worked on was just analyzing and teaching the students the 10 basic skills of reading strategies. And as I documented those, I ended up identifying what the students was mostly having issues with, which skill they were having issues with. And based on those skills, I was able to do some remediation with those students, which eventually helped them pass the course and move on to college level courses.
Oh wow, that is that. I think that's excellent because is it safe to let me just ask you this. With the students that you teach now, how many of them are students that look like yourself compared to a diverse culture?
Well, uh, when I was let me explain it this way. Hillsborough Community Colleges has 5 campuses. Okay,
Okay.
so pretty much in those 5 different areas where they are positioned at or where they're located at, we have different population. So when I was at
Mhm,
Ybor City campus, which is the area where I grew up in, those project areas, we have, of
mhm,
course, predominantly Black students.
mhm,
So in that area, of course, they were higher with the population of Black students that were having challenges. Most of the students at the campus I teach at now is mostly Hispanic. It's a Hispanic speaking institution, HSI, what we call it. And with
mhm.
that Hispanic speaking institution, we have more international students that are coming in that are second language students. So, of course, the higher population of with those students being in my classes now, if that answers your question.
Yes, sir. It does. It does. So, how do you measure the success of development projects?
Well, I mean, obviously, at the end of the semester, I always do a class and I analyze, my students, how many students pass with an A, B, C, D, F. And then from the exams, of course, I evaluate that exam as well because I'm all about numbers. I'm all about,
Mhm,
improving myself as a professional as well. So when I do that, now I can see what areas of focus I need to maybe focus on more. And most times they're the same strategies. The inferences, that I was teaching, learning them how to draw inferences, how to draw conclusions, how to define a word within the text of the material or vocabulary and context. So pretty much it's around the same thing, maybe finding the main idea, but when I teach writing, they have to learn how to use those certain skills, such as list words, for example. There are several reasons people should get a college degree. So those several reasons are called list words, and those list words provide that list of reasons. So when they learn these strategies and these particular reading and writing skills, they become better at it.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in development studies?
Well, honestly, you're asking a very truthful question. and as I, again, analyze my particular classes, the main thing that I see that's challenging with students is that honestly, they don't read. It's at the college level. It's that simple. They do not read. Why? Because they email me, they, come to me after class and they ask me questions of how do I do this? And I promise you, the steps are written out for them plain. Step one, do this. Step two, do this. Step three, do that. Step four, all the way down. And students do not want to read.
Mm.
That's the
You
biggest
know,
challenge.
do you think that's just a Gen Z thing? Because I think from an educational perspective, just a professional perspective, I think for those that's in that generation, it seems like, when it comes to the reading comprehension, the critical thinking, things of those natures, it's like they're lacking those skills.
Right. Another skill that they're liking as well is listening.
Hmm.
They're distracted with the technology and the cell phones, all of that stuff. They're distracted, very distracted. So I don't like to spend a lot of time on telling them to put away the phone or put away the computer, but I do that, and generalize it. So I'm not picking on one individual student, but
Hmm.
that's the main issue is being distracted and not reading really. That's the main thing
Mm.
because I get a lot of students asking me questions and they come up to me and I redirect them and I
Mhm.
look at it with them on the computer and I say, now read it for me. What does it say? They have no problem then. So I know
Mhm.
that's the issue. You're not taking the time out to read this thoroughly.
Mm. So, what are some of the things you think would be beneficial to prepare these kids to come into the college level when it comes to the reading and comprehension? Since it seems like it's kind of like a thing that's just natural that they're just here and you have to bring them up in some shape, form, or fashion.
Well, being that I'm at a community college and I'm on various committees. We are in talks about how we can better prepare the students. That means even with dual enrollment students, that are, if anyone isn't aware of dual enrollment, that's when a student is in high school, but they have the option to still go to college at the same time and complete a AA degree or as well as their high school diploma at the same time. So, in doing that in preparation to answer your question, I think we can better prepare these students by drawing a connection, meaning the community college drawing a connection with the high schools, or even starting at middle school from that eighth grade level, you know, and letting them know what's expected of them from the college level. So if we can draw those partnerships with these high schools and with these middle schools to at least grasp and get those eighth graders and then go to the high schools as well, I think we can just tap into that gap that we're missing at this time.
Mhm. So, how do you stay updated with the latest research and trends in development studies?
Well, there's a report that comes out every so many years. And that report,
Mhm.
pretty much I'm focusing on Florida, of course, because that's where I'm teaching at. And they do have one across the nation as well. So I look at those particular materials and see how close they are, how similar and or how different they are, and try to see what some of the issues are with some of those trends that are given in the report. And based on that report, then I look at mine at the local level in my own classrooms, which what I'm referring to, and then I compare all three of those levels from the national, from the state, and then from my local classroom and or my other peers or my colleagues, because we all have our different classes, so we do collaborate in the reading and writing department.
So, when you look at your students today, do you take the time sometimes where you just sit and thought and you think of where you were when you were their age compared to the kids now? And what do you see that you could make better or you could change?
Well, making better is quite a challenge, even though, I put the effort in doing it. But what I see from in the past, from when we were growing up and our age, we listened,
Mhm.
because when we came back home and we didn't have that work done, or we got a bad grade, we had some consequences. You know what I mean? So today, these kids, in my mind, or in my experience, and my, seeing what's going on nowadays, they don't have a strict hand on them, if I can say that, a strict hand on them. You know,
Mhm.
I think they're more, they have more freedom. You know,
Mhm.
in my opinion, and so forth. And then this technology again is taking over, so they're distracted. So study time and so on. And this is again just my opinion, but based on my uh, kids and so forth, they were able to sit, and do their homework at a table, and I was there to help, with their assignments. Just fortunately, I'm a teacher, so I was able to, have a hand in their, personal development and education. But to, in conclusion, though, with these kids, I can see where I can better help. It's just probably going and airing, like doing a segment on social media, since that's a broad, you know, way that we can reach out to people. And that's what
Mhm.
I had planned on starting to do, even from phonics, phonetic awareness, phonetic segmentation, all of these things that where we were back in the day and we were clapping introduction, back in the day, you know, and I don't know if they break down syllables because it's hard for students to understand how to pronounce a word, you know, and and that's what I do when I do my private tutoring. I start from the very beginning because I want to test these students. I assess them, first,
Mhm.
and I say, okay, let me see what they're missing. And sometimes I'm surprised. Sometimes they mix up the letter B versus the letter D, or they may not understand that the C and the K make the same word, but they have to practice the spelling then. So it's
Mhm.
all different methods and ways that we can reach out and reach to these students.
So, can you discuss a time when a development project did not go as planned and how you handled it?
Honestly, if I think about it, I haven't had one that did not go as planned. I've been fortunate to be a pretty brilliant, teacher. I didn't expect to teach reading and writing because that was my worst subject.
Mhm.
However, when we think one thing, God sends us another way. And I never meant to teach. I told the gentleman at Fort Valley State that was over the tutoring, because I used to tutor math. Math and science was my best subjects. So I ended up starting a math and science degree at Fort Valley State, and I was
Mhm.
tutoring math. So the gentleman asked me, did I want to go into education, because many students had, requested me. And he said,
Mhm.
you're doing a great job. So he offered me, of course, I took more hours because I needed more money as a student. So,
Mhm.
but lo and behold, he was wanting to get me into education. And then when the educational fair came, I just checked it out. And then I said, okay, education. I looked at education. Then I looked at my computer information system, pharmacy, and all of that, that I changed majors 5 times. And I looked at it and said, which one would I finish fastest? So the
Mhm.
fastest that I would finish was education because it had less courses. So I
Mhm.
took that one just to take it to get a degree. And look at me now, 27 years later.
That's what I'm talking about. See, progress is always it's always good to see progress. And being that example and then being there to actually help those to bring those kids forward, I think you're probably in the best positions that a lot of us will love to have that opportunity. What role do you believe technology plays in modern development efforts?
Well, I mean, technology is advancing. It is quicker than what we had back in the day. As far as I remember before we had the internet. You know,
Mhm.
we had to write everything out, and especially when we misbehaved, we had to write "I will not talk in class." 1,000 times. So, but modern technology has come a long way, and some for the better and some for the good. You're always going to have, the things that aren't working so well and the things that are, disadvantages versus advantages of using technology. The advantage of it is that you can type now a paper and it'll be more neat, being that now you can type it on a Word document. You know what I mean?
Yep.
As
Yep.
opposed to writing it out handwritten and you can't read the student's handwriting. So
Mhm.
I used to have to take my time. Plus, it saves some, I guess, some hurt and pain in your hand as well. So, so, technology as far as research, uh, definitely it's a lot. Is better. Because now we can research things. You have so much information out there, that you can learn and acquire, to where there's no excuse to anybody not being knowledgeable about some type of topic. You know what I mean? So technologies have played a mostly a positive role in helping students and helping anybody, all people, pretty much advance themselves if they just use the technology and use it, as a resource.
So, how do you approach the issue of sustainability in development projects?
Well, the issue of sustainability is really just understanding you have to have a group of people. If you're doing it on your own, of course, it's easier because you have your own values, that you follow
Okay.
and so forth. But when you're working in a group, such as we do at Hillsborough Community College, we have committee meetings and so forth. So we share ideas. So with most of us having the same values and also being on hiring committees, we pretty much identify with those candidates that fit within the realm of what our vision is, and making sure that our students have those high morals and values, coming out of school and be able to successfully transition into a career.
Mhm. Well, so, but with that being said, and you're thinking about sustainability, how do you put when you think of sustainability and your ability to teach your students, how do they correlate and work hand in hand?
Well, each group of students are different. Um,
Mhm.
by me being a certified emotional intelligence coach, I use those strategies to implement into my class. So I also use strategy as far as building relationships, which is a component or competency of emotional intelligence. What do? I go around the room and I ask students their name, where they were from, what's unique in their lives, what is their ethnicity, not race, ethnicity, because that's very important. That the whole point is that they find out commonalities among themselves. So you
Mhm.
have different subgroups based on the classes and who's in those classes, if I'm making sense. So when I
Mhm.
do that, I find out and learn my students. And as I learn my students, if I need to be, I will do some grouping, maybe with students of the same or different, so they can learn about different cultures and so forth. But at the same time, when they know one another and they're from that same group or same nationality, they seem to be more comfortable and they get to learn and they open up. So I use different strategies from time to time throughout the semester because it's a 16-week course. So I have plenty of time to group them into common groups or different groups. You know what I mean? Not, and that's not regularly. Most times they're sitting individually. However, with
Hmm.
those times that I group them, I use those different strategies to help them to learn. And that's how also sustainability, comes, with keeping a consistent pattern of success in my courses.
Okay. Okay. Can you share an example of a successful community development initiative you've been involved in?
Wow, which one? Um, well, in the community, I end up, pretty much from a kid because my dad is a minister, and I've grown up with many ministers as mentors. So, of course, I've helped at the church and so forth with different projects, maybe feeding the community or unloading a truck or something of that nature. I usually go at least 2 weeks out of the weekend and help, at different sites, whatever, to help uh, deliver or to hand out or prepare packages for people who need food or want food in the community. That's one particular project. Another project is joining, like being a consultant for private schools. And the private school sector, I like that more, even though I've taught at the public school for 10 years. Private school, I like it because it's more flexible. You can include life skills and emotional intelligence and gymnastics, or if you want to teach the students soccer, or you want to form a flag football team to join the Christian league or something of that nature, you have so much variety and flexibility to be able to give that student the best learning experience.
Oh, wow. So what advice would you give to someone starting a career in development studies?
Well, developmental studies is just a component of uh, understanding or completing a degree program. So
Okay.
if you're talking about a career in developmental studies versus developmental studies that leads to another career, because that's a difference. Like myself,
Hmm.
I started in developmental studies, but I ended up teaching developmental studies. But
Hmm.
on the other hand, you have those that are in developmental studies because they didn't do well for the entrance college exam. So now they
Hmm.
have to take that course in order to get to the college level courses they need for their career, maybe in business or nursing or sonography or communications or whatever the case may be, or whatever that degree may be. So I'm not sure if that's the answer you're looking for, because you say a career in developmental studies.
Hmm.
So is that
Yes.
what you mean as far as a career in
Well,
developmental studies? Or like
yeah, I
myself,
mean, yeah, so it's pretty much like, in the same path in which you have taken to not only learn it, but now you're teaching it.
okay, well, I think you really have to you have to be a very particular person, a very unique person, gifted, talented, that it was appointed to you to do
Hmm.
this assignment. Because I don't think there's a lot of people that want to teach developmental studies because they think it's a low level course, you know. Uh,
Oh,
you, you
wow.
know, and I say that because I'm a lot of times I have so much free will to teach classes as I, please to do. I don't know if it's we have a low number of interests, or from my understanding, I know in high school they didn't really teach it from my witnessing on my campuses. I can't say for other campuses, but witnessing on the schools that I was teaching at, I seen that you had some teachers that really didn't teach it and let the students really much like just sit around and play around in class.
Hmm.
So you have to be a special person to be able to teach these particular subjects of developmental reading and writing. Yeah.
Wow. So that's really interesting, because I think in just thinking about the way I define that in my mind for development studies, that's like something. It sounds like to me something that's really detailed, but it's also, it's basically like it's putting you in that role of actually crafting and growing and molding, where it helps to stage people to get to a point of more than just growth in their life to where they can actually do big things.
Right.
So I didn't know that, probably there's not a lot of people doing that, but until we actually talked, I mean, I found it to be really interesting because I was researching that and I'm like, man, I mean, I had no idea that, that this was an actual real thing. And so
Yes.
just to understand what this is, I mean, like, I'm sure that I think about when I was a young adolescent. It's like, now I could have used some of this when I was in school. It's not that the discipline and the structure wasn't there, but it was something else that could add a piece to the puzzle to make you that much better.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But developmental studies, I'm pretty sure it came about because people were ill prepared. They weren't prepared for college
Hmm.
level, just like I thought I was. I could read
Hmm.
well, very fluently, very fluently. I
Hmm.
could read on the paper and read fast. However, my reading comprehension, what I read, got lost very quickly. So
Hmm.
it's a special, particular skill that you have to be able to listen and gather information while you're reading, asking yourself
Hmm.
questions. Who or what am I talking about? What about the who or what? And those are those details. And as you're going through it, you're self questioning yourself. So it takes a high level of thinking and focus when you're reading.
Hmm. So I want to transition into another part of your career path, and that is the emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Can you tell us first, how do you define emotional intelligence?
Well, emotional intelligence is simple, and I didn't think so firsthand, and I'll tell you that in a little. But to answer your question, is is controlling and managing your own emotions, being able to recognize and be aware of your emotions, your behaviors, and being able to before you react, to
Hmm.
things, as well as understanding other people's non-verbal and verbal cues and so forth,
Hmm.
and how you respond to those. So it
Okay.
takes a high level of skill to be able to become more emotional intelligent.
Oh, wow. So, can you share an example of how emotional intelligence has played a role in your professional life?
Oh, yeah. If I may back up a little, I first learned of emotional intelligence around 2008 from Dr. Hank
Hmm.
Clemens, who, over the Society of Emotional Intelligence of Tampa Bay, and he set up other chapters around the states. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
about 2 years ago, he passed away. But he was a great man that taught me a lot about emotional intelligence. And as I traveled with him and as I continued to speak as part of emotional intelligence conferences, as well as Association of Florida Colleges conferences and Collegiate 100 meetings. Collegiate 100 is a organization that was founded by Dr. Ken Ray over at Hillsborough Community College, who's the student um, administrator, student services administrator. And he and I and Dr. Clemens ended up getting with the 100 Black Men, and 100 Black Men is the sponsor of Collegiate 100, which is specifically for African American males and making sure they get the support that they need and taking them on trips to meet others that look like them, and millionaires, close to billionaires and so forth. So it's amazing what who we meet when we go on these particular events and so forth. So my background in emotional intelligence was first found out and uh, drew my interest at one of those Collegiate 100 meetings that we had for the young men. And Dr. Hank
Mhm.
Clemens was there where I first met him. At first, I didn't think highly of it, of course, because my mind wasn't open enough to be there, just being truthful. I told him that actually. I said, man, I didn't believe in no emotional intelligence. I said, I thought it was just a bunch of riffraff, you know, really. And then he said something in which he specifically pointed out as an example of what I had done. And
Okay.
in Tampa, there's an interstate I-4. And when you get off on
Mhm.
22nd Street exit, you take a left turn and you come across the other traffic light and you turn in a right turn where you merge to go into a Burger King. And coming from the
Mhm.
opposite way, people are supposed to yield and they don't yield. So that means with me trying to get into the Burger King and they're not yielding, it used to make me so angry. I used to
Mhm.
blow and yell and scream, ah, And
Mhm.
after he said that, he said, what are you yelling and screaming for? The people are gone way down the road and you still just fussing with yourself. So now you're stressing yourself out, you're beeping the horn, you're yelling, and now you keep that on your mind and don't let it go. And the light bulb came on. Bing, that's me. Because I was stressing myself out.
Mhm.
So now if something happens, I have a near accident or something of that nature, I just say, hey, thank you, God. Because you got to look at the positive. You didn't get an accident, you didn't get injured, you're still alive. And that person is still going about their business. That's a particular situation, one situation, but another situation was when I got scammed. I got scammed years ago, back in 2003, on a business deal, and these guys gave me falsified names and so forth. So, and I ended up getting stopped one day in 2004. So, not knowing in a whole year that I had a warrant out. I was in Orlando getting ready to bring my daughter to Tampa. I was getting ready to get on I-4. Police pulled me over. He said, wait. And he had me waiting for at least about 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden, five more police officers came around me and they told me to get out, step out, push me to the ground, tackled me, all of that stuff. So in that case, I ended up, in lieu of termination, getting a lawyer. They allowed me to resign from Orange County Public Schools. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I want to be authentic. I want people that's listening out there to know that it's not it's not over until God says it's over. You know, I had to resign. I became homeless. A lot of people are hearing this for the first time, but I became homeless for 9 months. I didn't want to bother in my family because they were already crowded and they're the different homes and so forth. So I slept in my car. Slept in my car. I was very creative out there. So I had to use emotional intelligence, which I did not know at the time I was using it because I didn't learn of emotional intelligence, remember, until 2008. This was 2004. So I went up under heavy depression, heavy depression, you know, at nighttime, by myself, in my car. So like boss, I said, I either got to do or or I'm gonna die. I only had two choices. And I had a friend of mine who teaches, he's a dean at one of the other community colleges here now, but best friend of mine, he called me and he pretty much blessed me out because he knew I had the skills. He didn't want me to get down on myself. So he encouraged me to get up and I ended up working for a furniture store until I ended up getting things straight. And then that's when I was called to the college by another one of my friends who had that door open for me. Once I ended up finishing my probation, I thought my life was gone because I went from here back in 2005, six, $60,000 was a lot. So I lost all of that, lost my cars, lost my home, everything. So I
Mm.
was secretly living homeless because I didn't want people to know. The only ones knew were my close friends. and they were very helpful. Yeah, they were very helpful. But that's the beginning of understanding what I went through and get myself of eliminating high blood pressure and so forth, because my stress was up to here, where I was in the hospital for at least 5 years in a row with migraines, and they kept me for a week each time I went in. So I had to learn something and grasp something that will help me and that I can use, all the time, besides, really having the faith in God. But faith without works is dead. So I had to have some works or some resources that I can use to help myself, if that makes sense.
Well, as you're saying, as you're telling this story, because this is more than just compelling, but I think, well, just in my opinion, I mean, it shows just how strong the emotional intelligence were with you, because you were able to get your head around it, wrap everything up into its bundle, its box, sort it out, and make it work. What are some of the things that you would like to tell our audience, as in, as to if a situation like this occurs with them? What are some of the things you would suggest that they learn from your story?
Uh, Basically, you need to build good, positive, wholesome relationships. Seriously, we sometimes, and I know myself, talking for myself, I don't like to ask anyone for anything. So I think that when we hold on to ourselves and we think we can do it all by ourselves, we end up causing more issues for ourselves. But you can't be afraid to need help. The strongest of us need help. So I want to make sure I explain to the audience that you need to have a good networking group of people that you can have accountability to and for one another. That's
Hmm.
what I had. You know, I didn't know it. I did know it somewhat, but once I started going through the actual experiences, I knew for a fact that I had built a strong bond with these gentlemen, which I call my best
Wow.
friends. I know a lot of people say if you have more than you have what's the saying? If you have more friends on one hand, then they're not friends. No, I have seven. Seriously, I have seven,
Right.
and those guys are loyal. I'm telling you,
Hmm.
they helped me come out of this. Some of
Hmm.
them bought me lunch every day. Some of them, you know, let me come into their home after their wife and child left to take a shower and so forth. You know,
Hmm.
these are the kind of friends I had. Some of them actually, once I, said, "Hey, Lo, why don't you, go to school? You go to school, they know they give you money." Ah, idea, right? So I was able to get myself finally a place after I started those master's degrees because I got guaranteed student loans, you know.
Hmm.
But at the time when I didn't have a job, I applied for like 20 other jobs. Nobody would hire me because I had that charge on my record. You know, it became very frustrating. So with that being said, I would say to the audience that you have to understand how to build good, loyal relationships. Good, loyal relationships. Because a good friend is
So,
going to be there for you through thick and thin.
yes, sir. What strategies do you use to develop and improve your emotional intelligence?
It's funny you say that because I was just talking to my aunt this morning, and we both are terrible in traffic. You know, I have improved. I have, I have improved for the most part. And and I have a lot of patience. So I have to practice it. And what I do too, because as my pastor, Pastor Marty Jones and Pastor Rodney Norton, they're I count on these guys. So I'm looking at them as examples and so forth.
Hmm.
So when you talk about um, being patient, having patience, because without patience, you can't listen to a person's needs and so forth. You know, but to answer your question as far as what strategies I use, that's one of the strategies that I use. Right. One of the strategies I use is really just when I make a mistake or I may complain, because in the Bible it states, about complaining and so forth. So when I complain, I take it back and I have to say, God, forgive me for complaining. So I'm practicing it, and now I'm getting better and better each time that I may present, or if something may about to come out my mouth, nothing
Mhm.
bad, but I may want to complain or, fuss at somebody or argue, or whatever, have that feeling, and I have to pull back. So
Mhm.
that's controlling your emotions. Because
Mhm.
when you control those emotions, first of all, you're calming down. I take that deep breath and I say, okay, what's the positive out of this? So that's one of the
Mm.
main strategies I use for emotional intelligence is being aware of my own behavior. So it starts with the self. You have a self realm and you have a social realm. So if you're not complete in that self realm, how are you going to be successful in the social realm?
Oh wow.
Yeah, you
Okay,
ever
see
heard?
that's telling the truth there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You ever heard how are you going to take care of somebody else when you can't take care of
Can't
yourself?
take care of yourself.
Right.
Yes, sir. I believe in that too. Um, See, that's a great segue for this question here. How do you teach emotional intelligence to others?
Oh, that's easy. There, the emotional intelligence, because there are different platforms of emotional intelligence. The one that I have is called the EQI 2.0. It's emotional quotient. That's it, 2.0. And it includes 5 competencies, self-expression, uh, self-expression, self-perception, decision making, stress management, and then interpersonal that includes the relationship building and relationship management. So as I teach it to others at these different conferences, it depends on the level of emotional intelligence, understanding of emotional intelligence from the particular audience. So once I find that out, and if they
Mhm.
are somewhat knowledgeable about it or don't know about it, I teach the basics of what each one of those competencies uh, are, are, and so forth. Those 5 competencies that I just gave. There's also an
Mhm.
EQI 2.0 assessment that gives 133 questions. Okay, those
Mhm.
133 questions, when you answer them, it spits out a whole synopsis of each component and breaks down each component as you have answered those questions, and it rates you on a particular score for each one of those competencies and sub competencies of each main competency. Yeah, so
Oh wow.
pretty much that's what emotional intelligence, and that's my approach of teaching the basics, going through examples of what that may be like. Like, for example, self-awareness. What do you need to be aware
Mhm.
of? You need to be aware of your nonverbal expressions as well as your verbal expressions. Why? Because even though you're trying to talk softly, you may frown up like, ugh, I don't, that's disgusting or whatever. So we have to understand that our nonverbal expression communicates to people as well. So if we don't understand that nonverbal expression and know how to contain that expression and keep it to
Mhm.
ourselves, you just got to practice it. As Dr. Hank Clemens said, that emotional intelligence is not just a term, it's a practice. So we have to continue to practice these particular things like self-awareness and how we express ourselves and how we perceive ourselves, particularly in our identity roles. you know,
Mhm.
I'm a father, you know, I'm a son, I'm an uncle, I'm a nephew, I'm a cousin. You know what I mean? I'm a
Mhm.
professor, you know, insurance agent. I'm some of all of these things. So we have different identity roles that we need to be aware of and how we respond in each one of those roles, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yes, sir, it does because it almost sounds like, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but it sounds like, if you don't have the awareness or the wherewithal to carry out a plan to bring it to fruition and to execute that plan like it's supposed to be executed, then apparently you missed something somewhere where you can go back, you can fix it. But if you never get the opportunity to fix it and you're still missing out, then that means that you just plain and simply missed the curve.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like, as example, I'm an advisor at a private school. So I did a training with the staff. So what did I do first? I put up the mission and the vision of that school. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't unify ourselves together around that mission and vision, and we want to do our own thing, that plan is going to be carried out. So I made them aware of the mission and vision, so that way they can go and study it. And then when they write out these lesson plans and so forth, is this going to present a child in a global community? You know what I mean? You know, you
Mm-hmm.
have to align it with the mission and vision, or else it's no good. You
Oh,
know, you
wow.
can't come in there doing your own thing. And that's
Ah.
part of the principal's position as well, to make sure that the staff has a buy-in to that mission and vision, and everybody's on one accord.
Mm. That makes sense.
So
You know, that makes more sense than anything.
yeah, so that's my game plan. You know, when I go in and help, you know, I've had the chance to help at least 3 private schools. You know, so with that, you know, I love coming in and you know, just finding the solution, finding the solution. You know.
Can you discuss the impact of emotional intelligence on leadership?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've seen it so much, and I still see it today. And I always think of ideas, and sometimes I actually ask to speak to the manager of some of these particular restaurants and different places I go in, and you know, not to work or to have a contract with emotional intelligence, which I probably should, but I pretty much give them my suggestions, and I do that boldly now because customer service is not what it used to be. You know, customer service is, it lacks in understanding uh, people and providing good customer service. Just being kind, having a smile. You know, when you go in the store, greet your customers and so forth. So, emotional intelligence and the effect on leadership is just definitely so important, because that trickles down to your staff and so forth. So, if you, as a leader, you have to show by example. So if you are complaining, you are arguing, instead of saying, hey, we need to rectify this. This is how it's supposed to be done.
Mhm.
Instead of coming at somebody and saying, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, da 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 da. You know, what is that going to do? You know what I mean?
Right.
So we have to understand as leaders, I'm not saying that you have to be so nice and kind, but what I am saying is that even if it calls you to be assertive, that doesn't mean yelling and screaming. Assertive just
Mhm.
means being straightforward. This is the outcome that we're looking for. We're not meeting that. We're down in production. So this is the number we need to get there. Now, how can we fix that? How can we get to where we want to get to? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. It most certainly does. And as a matter of fact, I think that when, again, as you just explained that, you know, what I get from that, because, you know, again, I think nobody's perfect, but, you know, sometimes in just listening, there may be some things that I may have missed, especially in my communication, because I can honestly say there have been some times that, well, I don't have to say anything, but I have, I probably have had that look that you were talking about.
Right, right, right.
And
I
so
think all
afterwards,
of us.
it was brought to my attention, and I'm like, really? And so when I think about it and I go back and I just think about that sometimes, I have to be aware of that, because a lot of times, I mean, I'm just missing that sometimes, and it's not intentional. But I guess it's where, as you were talking about before, about trying to find that delicate balance.
Right.
Sometimes the balance is just off, and it's not intentional, but that unintention could cause many things. It has many, many consequences. But
Right.
I just don't think about that. I didn't think about that until it was brought to my attention. And as you say that, and just thinking more about emotional intelligence, and I'm just like, hey, I know I'm not an emotional person, but I think there's some things that I could do better as well. And so
Right.
I just really appreciate. I'm really loving this discussion because it's more educational to the individual, to help that individual to become a much better person. Because I'm always saying I always want to be better every day, and so I'm taking a lot from this at this point. I just want you to know that.
Right. Right. And as you were explaining about, being that type of person and not understanding that or being aware of that,
Hmm.
people like yourself that's not too emotional, that's how we can really understand emotional intelligence and fit it better for the people that surround us that we really care about and that we love. Because
Hmm.
that way you can have, empathy, putting yourself in their shoes. I don't think
Exactly.
a lot of people think about, being, having empathy, which is a huge part of emotional intelligence, because we always, in general, point the finger at somebody else when we don't even know, we don't point the finger at ourselves and really analyze ourselves. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Put
Hmm.
yourself in that. Have you done that before? Have you been in that situation before? And you probably have, but you're still judging someone else.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us, how do you handle conflicts using emotional intelligence?
Well, again, using the components, and that's how I teach them. You have to go through each step. Now, at the end of that emotional intelligence assessment, there's a paper that's printed out, and it's printed out specifically, and it breaks it down for you. So at the end, we have an emotional intelligence development plan. So that way you can
Hmm.
look at your lower scores. For example, one of my lowest scores was assertiveness, being assertive. I used to just sit back, let people say anything that we wanted. I was Mr. Nice Guy and so forth.
Hmm.
However, when I identified that, I had to look at it. The first situation I thought about was at work. All these
Hmm.
people are forcing themselves and they're tearing down students that need accommodations, special education students, so forth. So I said, hey, Lorenzo, you got to do something. So I started standing up. I started saying, hey, I got to speak up. So I started speaking up, as an advocate for those students, since that was my one of my majors, special education with behavior disorders. I'm like, no,
Hmm.
this is mandated. You need to follow the ADA or the IDEA Act.
Hmm.
You got to follow this. Is mandated. This is federal law. So I started
Hmm.
speaking up more, being assertive, just telling the facts, telling the truth. Say
Hmm.
the truth will set you free. So I started telling
Hmm.
the truth to people and speaking up instead of just letting things and anybody say anything to me that they want and walking away from it, thinking that's okay.
Hmm.
And that's not okay. You
Right.
have to pick and choose your battles. You have to have that discernment, to say, okay, this is a battle. Let me just let this go. This one, nah, I need to let this go. They've done it too many times, you know. So let me at least let them know. I don't have to scream. I don't have to yell. If they choose to scream and
Hmm.
yell, that's on them. But I'm not gonna raise my tone or my voice at you. If
Hmm.
so we got to understand how to, have that containment within ourselves in order to
Hmm.
be that better person to just resolve things. A soft answer turns away wrath.
Hmm.
Not it didn't say a truthful answer. I mean, I have to speak the truth. I have to speak the
Yes,
truth.
sir.
Yeah.
So, what are some common misconceptions about emotional intelligence?
That it doesn't do any good to understand it as long as you have the skills to work. But the more and more that I do research, emotional intelligence is needed more than having the skill. You know, you can be taught the skill. You know what I mean? That's why they have training. However, your emotional intelligence and working with other people, you're going to have to be able to utilize it properly in order to get tasks done. You know, you may not like some people that you work with, but that's
Mhm.
not the focus on that person. The focus is on the vision of the company and whether you want to get
Mhm.
paid or not. You know,
Mhm.
so we draw our attention in the wrong places on
Mhm.
people rather than the idea or the vision, if that makes sense. You know, but
You
part of
know,
that, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, going back to the question about the leadership in
Uh-huh.
this situation here is what it sounds like to me. So again, tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right, but it sounds like where when you have people that that are at work, and it may be somebody that's not liking some other person, but this person may have the opportunity of maybe leading in some shape, form, or fashion, but because they don't like this person, they're trying to sabotage that project because they don't like that person instead of actually putting the mission at hand. So, in situations like that, or have you ever seen situations like that firsthand to where maybe you wanted to step in or you had the opportunity to step in to correct that kind of issue?
Oh yeah. Again, back with because I think it's more so of a person not understanding the laws and principles of emotion. I mean, not emotional intelligence, but special education. That's
Hmm.
where I see it the most happen in my career. That teachers are really not too aware of that these accommodations to these students are very important, and they get aggravated and they talk
Hmm.
any kind of way to that student. And
Oh
I'm sitting
wow.
there like, are you serious? I've had students actually come to me because they know I will help and I will direct them into the right direction, you
Hmm.
know. But those that's how I intervene because they have a right. They have student rights, you know, and if they're not given, that can cause that student to fail that course. In which
Hmm.
I just had a situation of that manner, and I had to really get involved. And it was happened to be one of my mentors, you know.
Hmm.
So I mean mentees, sorry, not mentors, but one of my mentees. And with
Hmm.
that, you know, they didn't understand that the gentleman, you know, he's taking online courses, but I'm his mentor, and he's a quadriplegic, you know.
Hmm. Oh
So by
wow.
him being quadriplegic, you know, it was just like, okay, not only that, but if he even had a learning disability and he had that paper that shows that he's approved for he or she are approved for accommodations. Am I making
Hmm.
sense? Yeah. So
Yes.
I just had that case and I had to jump in. I say, hey, no, this student needs the accommodations. You know, that's a particular reason. Did you read the accommodations form? Because the forms are sent out to the teachers. So
Right.
we have to understand because we can cause our company or that organization to be shut down because of a big lawsuit, because
Oh
that's
wow.
federal mandated law. Federal
Hmm.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Civil Rights Act 1965. How do you measure emotional intelligence in yourself and others?
That's good because there are numbers on the actual sheet, but how I measure it without standard the number is showing my improvement, my productivity. When you because there's some things where I still like discipline on. You know,
Hmm.
I, I need to learn how to balance and get more rest and so forth, so that I can be more productive. So I've at least identified that I'm aware of that, and that's part of emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
You know, some of the things that you know with emotional intelligence, how I measure as well is people giving me compliments, you know,
Hmm.
because I'm more kind, I'm more understanding, and so forth. So I want to be able to be more attentive. What? How? By listening. You know,
Hmm.
so learned how to listen to a person fully. And sometimes I'm about 90% there because I still sometimes cut people off. And I need to
Mhm.
learn how to let them finish their statement or what they're saying prior to me responding, because I need to respond to their particular statement or question rather than going
Mhm.
on what I want to say, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So that's my
Mhm.
measurement, some measurements, forms of measurements that I
Mhm.
use.
Oh, wait, can you share a story where emotional intelligence made a significant difference in a project or relationship?
Really? No, I'm saying when you said relationship, but no, but I'm just laughing. I love to laugh, man. That's just me. But really, as opposed to, I'll start with relationships. Um, again, there's a book that's called Damage Free Dating that my pastor wrote, Apostle Mark T. Jones. And as I read that book, uh, it started teaching me more about really understanding, and understanding myself first. I have to prepare myself as what we call a husbandman if I
Mhm.
want to get married or have that relationship, that serious relationship. So I had to stop just going in blinded with relationships and just
Mhm.
going for what I only know from the outside,
Mhm.
and not understanding that person and sitting down and talking with her about that particular woman about certain issues. We have to
Mhm.
be upfront. We have to understand and tell them and be upfront about ourselves. And that's
Mhm.
one thing that I was lacking because I'm one that keeps my mouth shut. Communication was bad,
Mhm.
really. So I had to learn that and I had to be truthful with myself. But I learned this from my mentors, my pastors, and so forth, because they teach us those principles about marriage, about being
Mhm.
single, and so forth. So, with that being said, emotional intelligence, I have to be aware of who I am, my identity, as opposed to a professor and a father as it relates to being a husband, because I do have the desire to be that husband. The thing
Mhm.
is that I still need to work on myself, and
Mhm.
I'm telling you, reading those principles and understanding yourself and being authentic with yourself, because that's called self reality and emotional intelligence. It's called, really facing reality. Bro,
Mhm.
what is it about me that I need to fix?
Mhm.
Because we may think that we're all this and that because we got these degrees and so forth. That's and these titles. That means
Mhm.
nothing, you
Nope.
know, besides understanding yourself and really being truthful to yourself and becoming that man that you need to be for that woman when you find
Mhm.
that wife. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So, with
Mhm.
that being said, emotional intelligence in that matter, as far as relationships, any relationship that is, I'm talking about marriage and so forth, but that can be business relationships. That can
Mhm.
be a student teacher relationship. That can be friends, you know.
Mhm.
So, it's different stages of relationships. But again, as I said about those identity roles earlier, that fits within those identity roles as well as being self-aware and understand what situation you're in and what behavior you need to exhibit in order to be successful and productive.
So, what role does emotional intelligence play in team dynamics?
Again, understanding yourself, because without yourself you can't understand the role and the identity you need to be as part of the whole, if that makes sense, like a puzzle.
Mhm.
You may have some that's stronger in writing versus some that's stronger in reading,
Mhm.
as well as science or math. I'm talking academically. But
Mhm.
if you had a academic group, then it would be okay to have those different strengths. But you got to know, in other words, as we say, you got to stay in your lane.
Mhm.
Sometimes we want to be the big shot and we want to take care. every single thing instead of delegating those things to people who have more strengths in that area.
So I want to take some time out here before we go to this last part of the interview. But I want to go through um, a little 10 word uh, uh, quick answers from you. I want to ask you this word in word association. I'm going to give you some words, and I want to know the first thing that comes to your mind.
Oh Lord. Okay, let's try this. Let me see if I'm good at this. Let's see if my memory still serves me right.
First word, values.
The first, so I'm supposed to describe it.
No, the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word values.
Uh, Trustworthy, being trusting,
Benefit.
benefit.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be quick words, right?
Hmm.
A benefit, positive outcome.
Professor.
Hey, teaching the world,
Relationships.
challenging, takes time.
Learn.
Growing and succeeding.
Research.
Knowledge, plethora of knowledge.
Study.
Learning,
School.
opportunity.
Student.
The greatest gift of all.
Teach.
Talent.
Of those 10 words, can you tell me which one stands out most to you and is most important to you?
Well, actually, student, definitely, because that student is that one that you are preparing to take those ones that are retiring and replacing them, and
Hmm.
hopefully, having a productive life to serve our communities. So that's why I chose student. You know,
Okay. So it's the reaching back part.
right? Because it's like each one teach one.
Hmm.
You teach. I've probably touched thousands of students in 27
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
So where are those students now? I don't know. I haven't tracked all of those students, but I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure I would say probably half of them are making a difference in the world. Hopefully more,
Hmm.
making a difference in the world. So students, to me, are most important because you're taking the opportunity to shape someone else, as you said earlier about mold
Hmm.
them and preparing them for that successful track in their life or journey.
Hmm. So, do you think that for the students that you have taught and the ones that you are teaching right now currently, what do you
Mhm.
think is the impact of your teaching of to these students?
Oh, far beyond. I mean, it's beyond. The impact is great. I get feedback all the time, especially at the end of the year or the end of that semester. We have student feedback reports and so forth
Hmm.
that the dean sends out after those students have done their surveys at the end of the semester. So
Hmm.
on that account, as well as in person, them telling me physically or have given me a card written like, when I first came, I was afraid. Now you have taught me this, and now I can go on and succeed. You're, great as my first teacher. So
Hmm.
I implement those strategies and those skills of building that relationship with the students so that they're comfortable and then I'm approachable to those students. I want them to
Hmm.
come to me. I want them to, I know a lot of people don't, but I give my students my cell phone number. and they
Mhm.
text me. I put in parentheses in big letters, text only. So if it
Mhm.
calls for a conversation on the phone, I will call them. So I do
Mhm.
spend quality time with my students and instill in them those values or that emotional intelligence, because I implement as a strategy to building the relationships emotional intelligence into my classroom. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I teach them the basics about emotional intelligence, and if they have a situation occur, how to handle that situation, because now they're more mentally capable. They're
Mhm.
strong-minded now.
Mhm.
All right. So I'm transforming their minds really to be more positive and not to give up so quickly. So I provide those opportunities for them to approach me and to talk about,
Okay.
other things than academics. But if it gets too serious or too in depth, I refer them to a counselor.
Okay. So now we're going to transition to the last part of the interview, the one that's most impactful for the things that you are doing in your community, which is mentorship. And can you tell us first what motivated you to become a mentor?
So that's what motivated me to become a mentor, honestly, is that when I grew up in the project, I grew up part of my life in a medium income neighborhood, but for the most part in a low income neighborhood. When I moved with my grandmother, we had higher, um, I would say, values and higher, more opportunity to, have a better lifestyle, due to my grandmother being a registered nurse and grandmother and so forth. But when I stayed in low income, my mom did the best that she could and so forth. But coming from those particular uh, standpoint of mentoring, I needed mentoring. And how did I get
Mhm.
that mentoring? I went to the recreation center, and actually, Ray Lewis's father, we called him Coach Ray Ray. I didn't learn it
Mhm.
until later that that was Ray Lewis's father.
Mhm.
So he used to get us and take us to different parks. He used to feed us. We used to play flag football against different parks. So he was one of my first mentors coming up as a teenager,
Mhm.
playing sports and so on. And
Mhm.
from there, it was ministers that I told you about. I'm fast forwarding, but I had a lot of
Mhm.
ministers in my life that I was able to look up to and able to talk to and come to talk about personal issues and so forth. So even with some of my teachers and coaches, they came out of high school, picked me up out of the process, and took me to some of the you know, wealthier areas, in Tampa. And I would see these big, huge houses, and they would allow me to make money by raking their yard, cutting their grass, or helping on the rooftop and so forth. These are some of the things I remember. So as I was came and got pulled out of those projects through those mentors, I was able to really grow some great values other than the ones that my mom and dad taught me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I was able to experience it hands on and so forth, and experience this big, nice house, and they open up their house to me and so forth. So I was able to get that. So that's what encouraged me to become a mentor, so that I can help others that are less fortunate.
So, can you share a memorable experience from your mentorship journey?
Oh yes, if I can share that one, because it is part of the community, because I'm a professor at Hillsborough Community College, and
Mhm.
I'm an advisor for Collegiate 100, as well as a mentor for Hope Scholars, which are
Mhm.
those scholars that of African American and Hispanic heritage. So
Mhm.
with that being said, we take them an experience. One of the positive experiences is that we take them to Tallahassee during legislative days, and they're able to experience Congress and
Mhm.
understanding how a how a the whole bill process, how it becomes a bill and so forth, whether it's a Senate bill
Mhm.
or a House bill. And
Mhm.
we they were able to experience that and dress up in our uniforms and so forth that we have
Mhm.
for them. And that was a wonderful experience because I was never taught about civics or government or any of that except for in school. But I never was taken, to actually witness them being in session. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
now they at least have something that they can take that's concrete when they become the adults and understand somewhat about politics. I know a lot of people don't like politics and other different topics, but I think it's important as we become a citizen. Well, we become a citizen once we're born, but as we become an adult and be able to take care of matters in our hand and have a voice, if that makes sense.
So tell us, how do you approach building a strong mentor mentee relationship?
Well, again, just like building a relationship with the student, now I
Mhm.
can share more personal things with my mentee, because we're more on one-on-one sessions. Because
Mhm.
I have to find out, we have to, first of all, when we draw that contract, we have to agree that everything that we talk about is between us. It shouldn't go outside of this. And of course, it's going to be anything that's appropriate to the development of that student. So we need to agree on those things and those issues. I have two actually mentees now, and with that, the first thing I did, I asked them questions. Give me something about your family background. You know,
Mhm.
do you live with your mother and father? Do you just live with your mother or your father? These are important issues, so I know where they're at. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You know,
Mhm.
where did you grow up at? What environment did you grow up? Did you grow up here or New York, or where did you grow up at?
Mhm.
So other issues. What are some of your interests? What are some things that you dislike? You know,
Mhm.
so that way I can help them along the way on their journey of success.
Oh, wow. So what qualities do you believe are essential for a good mentor?
Well, the essential quality is having, being authentic. First of all, you got to be authentic. You got to show loyalty. You got to build that trust in a mentorship. Why? Because why are you mentoring somebody when you can't be trusted? Right? Am I making sense? So
Yeah,
because
you're
that student,
500% right.
that student may not want to give up any information. Sometimes when you build that relationship, I have students now telling me so much personal stuff, I just have to stop them. I say, hey, let me let me, let me send you to a counselor. I know somebody that can help you if you're willing. Because I guess I draw that from them, but I build that trusting relationship with students, and I make sure I listen to them. A person wants to
Mhm.
be listened to. You know, who doesn't want to be listened to? Because we
Mhm.
love to talk about ourselves to a certain
Mhm.
extent, but we have to humble ourselves and be able to be that person who are the ears. Why?
Mhm.
Because that person probably never got a chance because people are always cutting them off or they don't have time for them. So that's a
Mhm.
good skill that a mentor needs and a good sign of a good mentor, because you have to be able to listen in order to solve problems or issues.
Yep. How do you balance providing guidance and allowing mentees to find their own path?
Well, I give them a list of items. For example, one time I gave this one gentleman a list of things to do, like find out if you want to go to Indiana University, you need to find out first of all, do they have your major? So I put out a list of things that we work out together and let them do it on their own, because
Mhm.
it wouldn't make any difference if I tell them, oh, Indiana University got this major. That no, you need to do the research. What is the
Mhm.
best college? You choose 3 to 5 colleges or universities that you want to attend. Now, what is your desire of your degree program? Does Indiana University have that program? For example, my son, he wanted to be in sports medicine. The
Mhm.
university he went to did not have sports medicine. So he would have had to take a bachelor's degree in science and then get a master's in sports science somewhere else. He would have had to transfer, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
wow.
So
Yep.
we have to understand how to be independent and how to do this research. So it's better to show them rather than just telling them. And that's how I get students to be more independent and go on their own so that they're successful, they're confident as well.
So does that mean that when you're talking to one of your mentees, do you basically, or is it like you guys having like this dialogue conversation and talking about, you ask like, what are some of your goals? What are your plans? And as you give them this thing to figure out what's going on with them, you have this. So when you guys are working through that, you pretty much are giving them everything back in an order in which they just follow each step.
Right, exactly. But we work it out together. So I have them
Okay.
doing critical thinking because I like to include critical thinking within whatever I do. So how would you find Indiana University? Oh, Google it.
Hmm.
Okay, well, Google it. The only way you can find it. Okay, now when you get to their website, okay, what do you need to go? Because they say all of these majors and degree programs and so forth. So
Hmm.
pretty much helping them to maneuver through websites, peruse websites as well. So they know what they're
Hmm.
looking for and they become comfortable with perusing the websites because if you don't, again, do hands on, how do you expect them to learn it? So
Hmm.
that's what we do. Yes, write out a plan, game plan. Now, show me the first step. Once they do the first step, now you're on your own, bring it back. We also keep a record of our conversations and our meetings. That way I can go
Hmm.
back to that conversation and say, okay, last time we were here, you're supposed to do the second step. We went through the first step together by finding the website of Indiana University or University of Florida or whatever. So now did you do the second step? What did you find out? So I'm recording again. Did they make any progress? Yes. So that's how I measure that.
Hmm.
So to show that they can do it on their own.
Okay. Um, so how do you handle challenges or conflicts in a mentorship relationship?
It's funny you say that because I just had a conflict, a huge conflict, but I won't tell the details about the conflict. However, how I managed that conflict because it was pretty much dealing with a
Hmm.
disagreement in a project. Okay,
Hmm.
um, and pretty much pertaining to the rules and the
Hmm.
policies. So how I handled that, I did bring in a mediator,
Hmm.
which was the gentleman that was over the program. And
Hmm.
so when I brought him in, he gave his suggestion between both of our opinions. Well,
Hmm.
mine was more fact because it dealt with the alignment of the policies and so forth.
Hmm.
So he gave that. So sometimes you won't be able to resolve things between just the mentee and the mentor. So you will have to bring in someone else in order to be a mediator to hear both sides, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Because the
Hmm.
thing is that you know uh, our ears become deaf of one to one another once we're going back and forth.
Yep.
And now you need to bring in someone else that agrees with you and going strictly, just like I said, you need to follow that mission and vision. We need to follow the policies of
Hmm.
this particular program. What are the
Hmm.
policies? Did you follow that policy? So it's not aligned with that policy. So guess what? You need to either adjust to the policy or you lose out on your
Hmm.
on your on your scholarship or whatever that may be. All right.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's one way is really bringing in a mediator or somebody else to resolve it, to help you all resolve it.
Hmm. So, what advice would you give to someone looking to become a mentor?
Well, first of all, I think you have to have the passion and the want to be a mentor. You have to care for that particular person that you're going to be mentoring.
Hmm.
Um, that's first and foremost. Because just becoming anybody can become a mentor, especially if they're paying money for it. You know,
Hmm.
so you may be more money focused, than really having the genuine, you know, passion or attitude to want to help someone.
Hmm.
So I think that's a gift as well that you have to have in order to be a mentor and to be able to have that trustworthy behavior, loyalty, assertiveness, and building that trust and relationship to guide that person and lead that person to be productive.
So, how do you stay connected with your mentees over time?
Well, I'm still actually mentoring some of my mentees from 3, 4, 5 years ago. Really, they've kept in touch with me, and that shows as well that we built a strong relationship. Because even after the mentor mentee relationship has you know gone or dissipated, they stay in touch with me. So
Hmm.
with that being said, I love the camaraderie that I built. One just actually got married, told me he got married and so forth, and that he's starting his own trading company and all of that stuff. So I was really surprised. Another one actually named Devin Palladino. He was actually a homeless student himself. He
Oh,
actually,
wow.
yeah, he don't mind me saying his name. We talk all the time, but he has a book out that's called My Testimony, and it's on Amazon. But uh, he's has a mixed parents, white and black, and so forth. And he actually lived in 14 different foster homes. Uh, Along with that, he was homeless, sleeping in, train stations and so forth. So
Oh,
this
wow.
this guy now has written 6 books. He has the support from professional athletes of all kinds. He just came from Africa and gave books and support to Africa, the African students over there, and so forth.
Hmm.
So he's doing wonderful, as a student, being from where he comes from, and so forth, and the experiences that he has been through. Yeah. So that's was one of my mentors. I mean mentees as well. So many of them are definitely doing very well. They're very productive and they keep in touch for advice and so on, or for resources.
Can you share an example of a successful mentorship outcome?
Of course, I've mentioned several of them, but you know, just from mentoring, as far as myself, I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to work with these kids because it's not about me, it's about them. So that's a successful outcome for me, is knowing that they're doing well. Now they have the tools and the resources that they can use to further their livelihoods and so forth, in a positive manner. So pretty much that's my outcome, is understanding that that student is doing well. Again, not about me, it's about how successful and what I can help these other students to become or do.
Well, in closing, what is it that you like to leave with our audience? If it's, about what the things that you do, the impacts that you've made, how they can contact you, where they can find you, things of that nature. Is there anything that you'd like to leave with our audience?
Well, I just want to leave with the audience because this wasn't the time to tell about my whole story about being homeless. But I want to tell you that, you know, whatever the case may be, whatever you're going through, storms do not last forever. Perfect example. My daughter and I was going to Atlanta and it started storming, just pouring down raining, and people were pulling over on the side of the road. They were driving with their hazards on. And I told my daughter, I said, sweetheart, this is a perfect example of a storm, that storms don't last forever. I say, I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to slow down and I'm going to keep going. Sure enough, about 15, 20 minutes later, the rain stopped. She said, wow. She said, I see what you're talking about. Those other people still stuck back there in the rain. They still stuck in the storm because they stopped. We kept
Mhm.
moving. You know what I'm saying? And as we keep moving, guess what? The rain
Things
stopped.
change.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it changed. And we seen sunlight coming out. So to tell everyone, in conclusion, I really appreciate all of y'all that have visited. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at area code 813-619-8187. You can also reach me on Facebook as Dr. Lorenzo Carswell, as well as on Instagram as Dr. Lowell Carswell. Dr. Lowell is Lowell Carswell. You can also reach me by website carswellconnection.net. That's that's singular. Carswell, CarswellConnection.net. So those are three contacts that you can reach me at. Feel free to reach me. In the meantime, you can do whatever you put your mind to do. It takes a transformation, a renewing of your mind.
Well, I want to thank you for being here tonight, Dr. Carswell, because it's the inspiration that I felt when we first connected on LinkedIn that I knew would be a great you would be a great person to come on the show and speak to positive reinforcement because I think it's the things that you do and these subject matters that we discuss tonight are those things that really make a difference in people's lives if they actually put their minds to it and really think about what's at stake. I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
for what you've told a part of what your life has been like, and again, it's one of those things that just shine the light on you being the strong individual that you are, the positive individual that you are, to know that as we were told when we were kids, cream always rise to the top.
Right.
And so, that happens. You are a perfect example of that. You are a great guest for America in Black and White. And this is exactly, you are a perfect example of the things that we like to get back into the community. And I appreciate you so much for giving us this time because it's this time that's actually making the difference in so many people's lives out here that are following this show.
Right.
And again, as Dr. Carswell has given you his contact information, please, if you need any information or you want to just talk about some things that we discussed tonight, please reach out. Because if there's some things that you're on pause about and you got questions that you want to ask, I am more than sure that he is the man to answer those questions for you. And for those of you that are watching on the YouTube channel, please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notifications button and catch each and every episode that we go through every night, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that is, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can also send me comments or send Dr. Carswell comments. Ask those questions because that's the purpose of the show. That's building all of these communities that need this resource. So I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight. We will be here again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please join us as we have another great show. Thank you again, Dr. Carswell. And we'll
Thank you.
definitely be in touch because we definitely got to have you back on the show again.
Okay. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. You all have a great night. And